Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, the show where business, life, and inner work collide. I'm your host, Sana, and today we are talking about something that usually doesn't usually show up in boardrooms or LinkedIn posts: emotional regulation. We're taught how to manage money, manage teams, manage time, but rarely how to manage our emotional reactions. And yet, most of our biggest career mistakes don't come from bad strategy. They come from stress, fear, exhaustion, or impulse. My guest today has spent years studying the connection between the body, mind, and emotions. As a doctor of traditional East Asian medicine and a life and a health coach, she works with leaders and high achievers who look successful on the outside but feel burned out and disconnected on the inside. Her work focuses on helping move out people move out of chaos and into clarity, not by fixing them, but by helping them listen to their inner bodies, recognize patterns, and build habits that actually support their lives and leadership. So today we're not just asking, how do you stay calm? We are asking, what happens to your business and your relationships when you don't? So let's dive in and let's welcome Dr. Holly Battrum. So, Dr. Holly, welcome to BizBlend, and it's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. As you know, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it really, when we're rooted down and we're connected to ourselves and connecting the mind, body, and emotion, then we can just have such a greater impact on our communities, our families, and our businesses.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Dr. Holly, to begin with, let's first try to understand emotional regulation here, because when people hear this phrase, they often think it means controlling or suppressing emotions. From your perspective, what does emotional regulation actually mean, especially for leaders and high achievers?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Emotional regulation, in the simplest terms, to me means living in what we call our window of tolerance. And so we can't stop things from coming at us. Our lives always have highs and lows. And if we're emotionally regulated, we're able to respond to those situations in kind, compassionate to ourselves and others way. And we're not allowing those situations to derail us. But that does not mean, which I think is what happens, is that does not mean that we don't feel emotions, we don't experience emotions. But if we've sort of done the work on the outside of the boardroom or outside of the team meetings, um, then we can use those skills to sort of adapt to those situations. And so then we're not having to suppress extreme emotions because we're just we're able to regulate them before they kind of even start versus suppressing them down and that kind of thing.
Mm. Well, I really find that interesting because in business culture, I mean, we reward people for being tough or unshaken or aggression, but not necessarily for being self-aware. It's like the body is often the first place actually where the stress, it kind of manifests in there, before even mind admits anything. And that's exactly what where we uh usually see when people talk about burnout, like how they realize that they're having burnout. But
Yeah, I think you're so right. We we used to, and we still have sort of this hustle culture where we're almost sort of ODing on that anxiety and that rush and those adrenaline things. And we definitely have seasons in life where we have to push ourselves harder um to create new businesses, create environments, maybe finish a project. Like,
yeah.
and we need to live in those yeses as well, but we are not necessarily rewarded for regulation, 'cause I think it's calmness, but it's also adaptability and resiliency. And and so it's very, very easy to kind of see and almost feel it, right? Like you're seeing people on Instagram or you're seeing all this stuff where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. And if we haven't listened to our bodies, then we don't actually know our whys. And we stop listening to our bodies to get through those hard moments. But we never, it takes so much energy then to hold that pattern in place that our signals get confused, right? And we don't actually know if we're anxious or down or overworked or underworked or any of those things because we haven't actually started to reconnect.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I think. And when we talk about ambitious people, now a lot of ambitious people believe that, oh my goodness, these are all about, being softer or slower. Especially emotional regulation will make them softer or slower. And they worry that if they stop pushing themselves, they will lose their edge. From what you have seen, Dr. Holly, does regulating emotions actually improve performance, or does it risk dulling ambition?
It actually, even though I understand that worry, it actually improves performance, right? Because it
Okay.
improves mental clarity, it improves focus, and it's that it's such a hard concept to understand and trust yourself to say, "Oh, I'm going to step out for 3 minutes so that I can work for
Mm.
50." And it helps us tune out sort of that rumination going on, not tune out, excuse me, the rumination and kind of stop that and feel like we're actually accomplishing stuff. And I think you're absolutely right. Most of the time we use that procrastination, that stress, all of those things to push us to our next step. And so of course it's actually very uncomfortable to fit in this introspection and use that to move us towards the next step.
Hmm. I mean, first of all, it really challenges this very idea of burnout being a badge of honor, or this feeling that, oh my goodness, now I'm feeling so tired, so um so stressed out. Um Somewhere down the line it kind of gives you that satisfaction that yes, okay, um you know, I have done something today. Otherwise, if there is a rest in there, if there's no feeling like, basically the burnout is the badge of honor here. That's what I like want to say. But if you can share some examples, or maybe some observations, or um, case studies of how someone's work or leadership style changed once they learned to regulate their stress instead of living inside it.
Yeah, I think absolutely burnout in most cultures is a badge of honor. Um, when we start to find our own rhythm and start to emotionally regulate, we do see just such a stronger communication skill, and
Mm.
our projects are going to take less time. And for one example, so yes, often when I work with clients, I do see just such a massive shift because when we're emotionally regulated, we're able to shift through what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, what
Mhm.
season of our life we're in. So even if we're still kind of rushing because that's actually what we need to be doing, we're not secretly um, dissatisfied with that rush, right? Does that make sense? Like we're often when we're in those modes, um, for example, like I was working with a client and a leader, she's amazing, uh,
Mhm.
business owner, and she didn't even kind of it's hard to see our own selves, and so she's like, "I can't do this in the morning, right? I'm supposed to do all these things for health-wise, and I just can't get them in." And
Right.
we were able to say, "Oh, well, look at this lunchtime that you're not using for, and so we were able to kind of restructure this. And now she's, much healthier and much more grounded in her emotions. And she didn't actually have to quit work or, it wasn't this massively extreme example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it- that's right. That's right. Some argue here, Dr. Holly, that uh, stress is what creates innovation and urgency. Like there's good stress and then there's bad stress. Um, so if everyone regulated their emotions and everyone slowed down, wouldn't that make people complacent or less competitive? Like, it's kind of a very nuanced, angle that, we're trying to explore. So what's your thought on this?
Oh, it's such a great angle because I think that's one of the reasons that most of us don't want to slow down because we are very scared that we will become complacent or not create, the necessity of invention, right? And necessity is the invention that can get what but I disagree in the context of this misunderstanding that emotional regulation is slowing down. Emotional regulation does not have to mean cutting back on what you're doing. It means understanding your like it's movement with intention. It's um tuning out, like not being impacted by all the noise that happens in our lives. So I understand where we fear that complacency will happen if we slow down, but it's
Mm,
not really emotional regulation isn't really slowing down.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that actually makes sense, Dr. Holly.
Mhm.
And I think it's also safe to say that stress is not the enemy here, but chronic dysregulation is. And I think it's a huge, huge distinction. Like it's not about eliminating challenge, it's about eliminating the constant internal crisis in here.
So well put. Yeah, absolutely. Stress has gotten such a bad name, and I obviously chronic stress, but is not great. But if we're helping with the regulation, then we decrease the chronic stress, right? So we can have the acute stress and still live in those moments, but we're tuning out that internal noise. So not t I'm sorry, tuning out's not the right word. We're calming that internal noise. That's what we've all been doing. We've been tuning it out for too long. So I think we need to listen to it and then process it, etcetera.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You also advocate for, talk about small intentional shifts, how they create lasting change. And I think there is no nuance in here because it is something tried and tested through so many lived experiences out there. So um for someone, who's listening to us, who is feeling constantly overwhelmed, but they doesn't have they don't have time for a total life overhaul. Are there any realistic starting points?
Yeah, I mean, I think something as simple as taking a bathroom break, you know, especially many of us push through our days and we don't listen to any of those really basic signals, right? So, and you can kind of have it stack and say, okay, I'm going to run to the bathroom and I'm going to take 2 deep breaths. Going to do, a couple of different 4 count breaths in here. And all of those really simple things will then start to build and build and build. And you're absolutely right. We've applied this kind of all or nothing mentality on some of these great techniques or situations where if we go do a mindfulness practice that it needs to be an hour long or all of those things and that's just not where we need to start. And sometimes it's visualizing a stop sign when we start to spiral or taking 2 extra breaths when we want to react to something strongly. and seeing what we can kind of start to pull back ourselves, or taking 2 extra minutes to make a decision about the next thing that we're supposed to be doing. Giving ourselves, I like to give my clients an extra, like, just give yourself 30% more time to get from point A to point B. You know.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I think that initial shift itself is the pivotal point in there, because I think for someone who is like, like I've seen my father, like he has this habit, and I think we all kind of face this, almost every one of us, that we get up, we go out for work, we come back, we sleep. um we we do wait for the weekends to rest. We know that, okay, let me work it out for 5 days, let me slog, let me somehow get through these 5 days, um and give my best, and then I have my Saturday and Sunday for me.
Mm.
And the moment Saturday hits, I mean, you feel completely numb, like, you just can't get out of the bed, you don't feel like doing anything. And I mean, goodness, it becomes much more challenging for um, high achievers, ambitious people who are also having their families, who are caregivers, who have a lot of responsibilities. Um, and then once they kind of try to, um, let's say, retirement, or maybe they're taking a break, um, uh, when they stop that rhythm, that routine, they feel like, it has kind of eaten down a part of their identity. Like,
Mhm.
it has absolutely made them worthless. Their worth, their identity is attached to the fact that, they work. Not that work is just a part of their life. Work is their life. I mean,
Mm.
it's their work. So I think that that shift, that consideration, that no, it's not just your identity or your worth. There are things outside that also. I think it's a deep shift. It takes time. For me, that's what I feel, Dr. Holly.
I completely agree with you. I think partially because we maybe spent so many years um, pushing ourselves, right, to justify our experiences, and we were, many of us were taught that our work was what took care of us, right? And then we are caregivers elsewhere, so we needed this resource to care, and that's absolutely understandable. And I think a big thing is going to be taking away. I see that a lot, like with patients and people who are maybe empty nesters in their lives. They've been taking care of their families, or then retirement's another big transition. And
Yeah.
and in the States in particular, but I think many places, we don't honor the wisdom of aging and transition.
Mm.
And if we can do that, twofold, because you kind of talked a little bit about, so if we can honor that wisdom and say, you can now be at peace, and
Mm.
also you have value to share still, right? Your value is not about what you do or what you produce. Your value is yourself and the wisdom that you have. And then when you've created that life or participated in that life, we're 1,000%, right? You're push, 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 crash, push, 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 crash. And I think the crash is actually also very understandable, but many of us have so much guilt that we crash in our actual moments of joy. And and so that's that emotional component too, where the guilt is kind of, or the shame is overpowering us, and all these negative things, negative emotions, that we're not being compassionate to ourselves with an understanding, sort of course you're going to crash, so is because it's been work, 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 work. And how can we be more regulated in that work, so then we can also be more regulated at home?
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, Dr. Holly. Um, And before we wrap up, I'm very sure that listeners would be having a lot of thoughts and their experiences to share with. So, and they would also love to connect with you. So, Dr. Holly, if my listeners they would like to connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
Oh my gosh, I'm available on Instagram at Holly Battrum. My email is holly@hollybattrum.com. My work website, my business website is showcourt.com. So that's SJOKORT. Um, and so I would love to answer questions. I would love to connect. I have a couple different ways people can work with me virtually as well. So yeah, I'm happy to hear people's thoughts.
Sure. Super. Listeners, there you go. You heard it from Dr. Holly. I have all the links, all the details mentioned in the show notes. And so find them attached along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And let me tell you, listeners, I think today's conversation it really challenges the idea that success has to always feel like suffering. Um, because we talked about how emotional regulation isn't about suppressing feelings; it's about understanding them. It's not about slowing down ambition, but then also sustaining it. Not about fixing ourselves, but learning how to care for ourselves so we can lead, work, and live with clarity. And if there's one thing that I'm going to take away, listeners, I think this is that I don't level up by pushing harder forever. I level up by listening better to myself, to my mind, to my body, to my soul, to my emotions, to my feelings as well. So, to all of our listeners, if you have been feeling constantly on edge, reactive, or exhausted, maybe the question isn't what's wrong with me. It is maybe what I am not regulating. So, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of BizBlend today. And Dr. Holly, thank you so much for your insights, for explaining something as um, interesting as emotional regulation because it has a lot of misconceptions. So, thank you so much for addressing this.
Thank you so much for hosting such a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Holly. And once again, listeners, if this episode connected with you or maybe some part of it resonated with you, share it with someone who is always fine, but probably tired. Until next time, stay ambitious, stay aware, and take care of the body and the mind that make everything else possible. This is your host, Sarah, signing off. Thank you.